Welcome, Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, or girls, or children. Tinkerbell. This is episode 347 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 25th of March, 2020, and featuring Torchwood Small Worlds, written by Peter J. Hammond and starring John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness, Eve Miles as Gwen Cooper, Bern Gorman as Owen Harper, Naoko Mori as Toshiko Sato, and Gareth David-Lloyd as Yanto Jones. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and I do need personal protective equipment for this virus. I need computer goggles. With me are Randy Ronson McCulloch.
I need new glasses in general, yet I'm afraid to go to the doctor for coronavirus.
Mad Matt Winchell.
It is, in fact, the end of the world as we know it, and I still actually do feel fine.
Tim the Enchanter Sheridan.
Even money, the next virus is called the Heineken virus.
And Thomas Fireheart.
God, drugs really hit Tinkerbell pretty hard.
And if we had 10 times the audience we do now, Randy would have just demonetized our podcast.
No. I think we'll make no money anyways on YouTube.
Mm.
The only place the episode wouldn't be able to air, though, would be China. Hello, Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, make sure of it now.
I'm still waiting for this podcast to take off so I can quit my job.
So that one of us has to get famous so we can bankroll it.
So, this show taking off. Hey, Tim, you got a genie lamp over there?
Maybe I do.
Polish it extra hard, just maybe. Everything's a slow mounting hill. It's just a matter of getting noticed at the right place at the right time, and there's so many podcasts these days, it's ridiculous.
Mm.
So, how was everybody's week in isolation?
Not too bad. I basically... Pretty much all I've done, aside from going to work, has been eating, sleeping, playing Animal Crossing. That's basically been it.
There was something new this week? Oh yeah, I didn't have to go to church. That's the only new thing here.
That's right. Technically, Matt has been in self-isolation since like 2013.
You humble me, sir. I've been at it longer than that. There's nothing to do in this town. I've been technically in isolation since 2009.
I couldn't remember what it was when you moved back to Mayberry.
2009. I started doing videos in 2010. And 2010, rather.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of hard to call it 010. I mean, technically, yes, it is 2010. But
I was going to say, I definitely called it 010, 011, 012. I mean, technically, it's 020 right now.
Technically, you use aught, not O, when dealing with time. So it would have been aught 20. If you want to sound like an old guy. Anyway.
I'm old enough, I don't need to make myself artificially older.
Oh, please, Bill, you're one of the youngest people in this group.
Yes, you are.
True. But I think this is the only group that I'm in that I can say that about.
Yeah, well, you know,
At least until I get my doctorate.
I win the old fogey award here, so.
Yeah, so you can call it aught.
Well, back in aught 12. Back in aught 13.
Get off my lawn.
Remember that Doctor Who special they did?
I had
You know the
pudding
one
today.
done by Stephen Moffat? Okay, could I make myself sound any more redneck? Seriously. Anyway.
They had soup today.
Well, you can. What you need to do is after you finish every couple sentences, you spit tobacco.
Yeah, and then occasionally say yeehaw.
I was about to say, you had to yeehaw. Or you could make it official and tell someone to squeal like a pig.
And I could have gotten away with it, too, if it hadn't been for those pesky kids and that stupid dog. Yeah.
Ruh-roh.
All right. Sounds like it's time for today's show.
Well, actually, I was going to say my week was pretty much the same
Oh.
as Thomas's, minus the fact that I didn't have to go to work. And instead of Animal Crossing, I've been playing Assassin's Creed.
My workers staying at home and making videos.
Thus, in a few weeks, I may actually have a review of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But I actually have to beat it first.
I did have to go to work because drive-through workers are essential.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's where like 90% of people are getting their food.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Especially with all the grocery stores out last week because of people panic shopping.
Oh, God, yeah. We did go to the grocery store this week. It was slightly better than the week before. There was bread. On the other hand, my freaking breakfast items were gone. I'm like, "Ah!"
Whereas I went to Aldi yesterday and they were fully stocked. So I'm like, either people are ignoring Aldi, which is entirely possible, or the panic buying is done.
I think the panic buying is wearing off and done. I'm
Yeah,
hoping.
There's still panic buying maybe in the bigger places, but not in Aldi.
I'm hoping this week when Aaron and I go shopping, I can actually get some frozen waffles and other breakfast stuff. Anyway, so to this week's show, we have news and birthdays, and we have enough birthdays this week to make up for the complete absence of birthdays last week.
Hooray!
Yeah.
It was just one of those things where last week there were no birthdays, and this week all the birthdays.
Oh, and one of them I didn't realize was in Torchwood.
You will talk about that in a moment.
Yep.
Then we have our news is not that heavy because, of course, most productions have ground to a halt.
Oh, yeah.
We have some geek talk. We have a review of Shame,
Shame.
and then we've got our episode summary, our review, and our ratings. And whose turn is it to do the summary this week?
'Tis I,
Ah,
the magical man.
Knew I forgot to do something.
Magic man. He's got magic hands.
Yes, and magic feet, and a magic elbow. Only one elbow. Only one of my elbows is magic. The other one is mundane.
Anyway, let's hop right into it now with birthdays. Starting with March 20th. And that starting is the birthday of Freema Agyeman, who played Martha Jones in 2007, and then reprised the role in like single episodes in 2008 and 2009. Actually, she was in 3 episodes in 2008. She turned 41.
Are you including the episodes of Torchwood?
No, I was not.
Ah.
Also, in the same day, is the birthday of John Delancey, who played Alan Shapiro in Torchwood Miracle Day, but is best known as being Q from Star Trek and, Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. He turned 72. Wow, he's getting up there.
I didn't know he was
Was that the one that was surprising you, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, Torchwood Miracle Day had a whole bunch of guest stars.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I knew some of them. I did not know that one.
Nana Visitor, who played Kira Nerys, was in it too. I'm like, seriously? And they were all in single episodes or a couple episodes.
That's why all shows with cameos need the what's the line that we were just talking about it last week? What was it? Look, it's Mark Hamill. That sort of caption.
Well, John Delancey was playing like one of the leaders of the villain organization in Miracle Day, so he was in there for like the last half of it. Anyway, March 21st sees the birthday of Bruno Langley, who played Adam Mitchell in 2005. Technically a companion because he was in more than one story.
2-episode companion, which I think makes him more than Katarina or Sarah Kingdom.
One of them anyway.
More than
Katarina was
Sarah
in
Kingdom was actually there for like an entire prolonged story.
Anyway,
the latter half of one story. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. He turned 37. Also, it's the birthday of Chris Chibnall, the Balchinian. The writer from 2000. He was a writer from 2005 to 2009, and is the current showrunner since 2018. He turned the big 50. Also on the same date is the birthday of Timothy Dalton, known from Rassilon in End of Time, and better known for that stint as James Bond. He turned 74. Same day sees the birthday of Peter Pratt, who played the Master in The Deadly Assassin. I believe that was his only outing as the Master, but because the Master is a recurring villain, anybody that played him gets in our listings.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been 97, but died in 1995 at the age of 71. Also,
His master is known as the Jeffrey Beavers Master.
yeah, because Jeffrey Beavers, I think, wound up reprising that same role in Keeper of Traken, and is better known for it. Honest to God, I liked Peter Pratt's version better.
The acting's better, but I think the makeup is worse on his. Sadly.
I liked the makeup better too.
Yeah.
I don't know, something about the actual eyeballs in the Jeffrey Beavers version just makes it seem faker. Anyway, 22nd sees the birthday of Mary Tam, who played Romana 1 from 78 to 79 during the Key to Time run. Would have been 70, but died in 2012 at the age of 62. And finally, today, the 25th, sees the birthday of Patrick Troughton, who played the Doctor from 1966 to 1969. He would have been 100 today.
And then again in a few specials.
But he died in 1987 at the age of 67 in America at a convention.
Died with his bow tie on.
Actually, probably not, because he died in his hotel room, overnight.
I think they said he was still in outfit for the convention for the most part, so hard to tell for sure.
Either way, having a doctor die at your convention kills your convention.
Yep. You're known as that convention that killed a doctor.
Yep. Anyway, we move on from births to deaths. And oddly enough, it's a death of that virus that should not be named. Which I already did once, but yeah.
So who's stopping you now?
With sad hearts, an Unearthly Podcast announces the death of actor David Collings, an actor who played 3 roles in Doctor Who. Vorus in 1975's Revenge of the Cybermen, Poole in 1977's The Robots of Death, and Mordrin in 1983's Mordrin Undead. Collings was born in Brighton in 1940. He started television acting in 1964 in a production of Crime and Punishment. He became a staple bit actor in British TV over the next 20 years, appearing in such shows as Dr. Finley's Casebook, Point Counterpoint, The Possessed, Canterbury Tales, Elizabeth R., By the Sword, Divided, Miss Marple, A Murder is Announced, Sapphire and Steel, and The Shadow of the Tower. He was the English dub voice of Son Wukong, aka Son Goku, in the 1978 Japanese show Saiyuki, known in English as Monkey, based on the Chinese classic Journey to the West. He was also in the 1977 miniseries Treasure Island.
I'm sorry, there's a word missing there.
Playing Blind Pew. He was Deva in the final episode of Blake 7. In film, Collings is best known as Bob Cratchit in the 1970 film Scrooge, the musical adaptation of Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol starring Albert Finney. He also had roles in The 39 Steps and The Outsider. In audio, Collings' most popular role was of Legolas in the BBC radio version of Lord of the Rings. He also worked with Big Finish, reprising his Doctor Who roles. David Collings' death was sudden at the age of 79. He is survived by his wife, actress Karen Archer, and their children.
Yep. So if you don't remember, Poole in Robots of Death was the person with robophobia.
Yeah. He was the one that was supposed to be the sidekick to the black robot.
Mm-hmm.
The black and silver one, I should say. believe he had silver trim on his stuff. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he was the human that had the breakdown.
In Modern Undead, he's the main guy that we see around running around with his
Yep.
brain on top of his head.
He's the eponymous character.
And Vorus is like one of the main members of Voga, the City of Gold. I think was like their chancellor or something.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering why I was seeing him. Yes, he seems to be the chancellor or one of the head ups. But yeah.
Yep.
So he
So
played an
those were-
alien.
Yeah, he tended to play either aliens, except for the one time where he played pool. But yeah. I know he had reprised that role, I think, in some of the more recent stuff that they had been doing with the Vokbots in Big Finish. And I think he might have played Vorus in like one episode where the Doctor went back to Voga. So, yeah. Anyway, moving from that, we've got some kind of weird episode news.
Yes, kind of weird. So apparently, when people in the TV business go into isolation, they get bored. Consider the case of former Doctor Who showrunner Stephen Moffat and Sontaran actor Dan Starkey. Apparently, they keep in touch over the internet, probably to talk Big Finish stuff. In either case, one got wind of the plan to have a global viewing of Day of the Doctor on March 21st and decided to make a new opening for it like they had for the cinema release. Moffat did the writing, while Starkey played Strax. The problem? Being at home in isolation means no access to BBC's props or makeup. The answer? One of them had a Strax plushie and took it from there. With an additional voice from Neve McIntosh, and boom, a slightly unusual new opener to Day of the Doctor.
I've actually watched this. It is rather tongue-in-cheek and hysterical. Because yes, you see the plushie
with the Doctor's arch enemy,
walk
the
like
Master.
Muppet walk on
All
the
the
screen.
original
It's like,
Doctors assembled to make
hello,
this special episode.
humans. It's Strax. I've just got back with a battle with the Doctor's arch enemy, the Master. He never laid a glove on me. But somehow, when I got home, everything I own is really, really huge. And they just take it from there. They mock the 3D release of Day of the Doctor. Yes, we're proud to show finally the release of Doctor Who in the 2D format. For those of you wishing to watch the original 3D format, give yourself a blinding headache, poke yourself in the eyes, and say, "Why was all this necessary?" Yeah. It's
I
just,
heard of the viewing party, but I did not know about this.
oh yeah. That was something that I think it was Stephen Moffat's account released to Twitter. And it was him, Dan Starkey, and one line from Neve McIntosh asking Strax to put the T on. So it was, yeah. It's not what you expected, but at the same time, I was laughing my ass off the entire time.
Not the hero the world deserves, but the one it needs right now.
Well, yeah, laughter is the best medicine after all. Anyway, Tim, you want to continue?
Alrighty. So, with the success of the aforementioned global viewing of Day of the Doctor, #SaveTheDay, the Doctor Who Twitter community is planning another global showing tomorrow on the 26th of March. This time, it's in celebration of the 15th anniversary of the premiere of New Who with the showing of the first episode, Rose. So get your Series 1 DVD or Blu-ray out tomorrow, or open your streaming app with Doctor Who at 7 p.m. GMT, 3 p.m. Eastern, and log into Twitter to join the Doctor Who community and Russell T Davies, who has promised something special for the occasion. It's #Trip of a Lifetime.
Apparently, they're going to be doing a few of these, trying to keep people entertained in the next few weeks. I am not a Twitter person, so I don't know what's going to happen, but, Russell T has promised something special, and, this is his first time really coming back to the Doctor Who community.
Mm-hmm.
It might just be because he's really, really bored.
That could be a possibility. In which case, hi, Russell. Welcome back.
Oh, actually, next one's supposed to be Bill's. I'm sorry.
Oh.
All right. So speaking of bored while in isolation, Jodie Whittaker has posted a message from the Doctor to everyone out there
Oh,
giving
dear.
words of hope and encouragement to everyone trying to get through this crisis.
Oh, she's actually
I
dressed
don't
for
know
the
if I was-
occasion. Okay.
Yeah, she's mostly dressed for the occasion. I don't think she's wearing the proper T-shirt, but her jacket's she's kind of hunched forward, and she is wearing the coat. So it's not you can't really see the T-shirt that well.
So is my browser not
This is
loading
an
properly,
emergency
or is the
transmission.
article
If you're
just
seeing this, the
a
TARDIS must have detected an
picture of a
upsurge in
tweet? Oh, there we
psychological
go.
signals
Now,
from
It
somewhere
now
in
there's
space.
the
takes a
image
little bit.
or
Yep.
the video. Okay.
Yeah, I can't tell for sure if the shirt is right, but it looks close enough. There's
Yeah.
the stripe where it needs
She
to be.
she found a shirt in her closet that was close enough for the thing, because again, they don't have access to the BBC prop and costume department.
And she just might happen to have a jacket anyways, so.
She probably stole one from the costume department.
Well, yeah,
It's
they
not
probably
a-
have like a dozen of them, so she's just like, you know what, this
she
one
probably
got
has
to
a
the shoot
replica
fine,
for
I'll take it.
conventions, I would think, right?
That might be what happened. Is
That's
she has
also a possibility. She might have gotten it from a
or
convention or something.
when they came out with the get the Jodie Whittaker doctor coat, she might have just bought one.
Mm-hmm. There's multiple ways she could have gotten it by now.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with the lighting what the shirt she's wearing.
Basically,
actually
I think
looks
somebody
like.
somewhere might be a little bit worried.
I know they sell that
I'm not
T-shirt
thinking
too,
stuff
because I know
printing,
Aaron
as
has
I
one.
like to call it,
Is it
That's
white
possible,
and gold
too.
or is it blue and
from
black?
an army of Sontarans. But keep that to yourself. Now,
Don't make me hurt
here's
you.
what I do in any worrying situation.
It's
Anyway.
both,
One,
and neither.
remember, you will get through this.
Anyway, trying to get through this, we go to video streaming. To help make up for canceled events, Fathom Events is streaming the Time Space Visualizer, starting at March 28th, which is Saturday at 2 p.m. GMT. That's 10 Eastern, I think. The stream will be a collection of pre-recorded and live interviews, archive of convention panels, and more. Guests include Sophie Aldred, Bonnie Langford, Nicola Bryant, and Mark Strickson, Katie Manning, Annette Badland, Ian Hallard, and Mark Gaddis, and more. They said yet to be determined. Fathom Events, go to Fathom Events website for more details on this event.
Just like a live stream or what?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a live stream or if it's something you can stream select. They're really not giving much details in the article. And then finally, we have some Big Finish news.
Okay. Captain Jack's impossible life collides with Jackie Tyler's and River's songs in the Lives of Captain Jack Volume 3. 3 new Jack-tastic adventures, including Crush by Guy Adams, Mighty in Despair by Tim Foley, and R&J by James Goss. The Lives of Captain Jack Volume 3 is available now at £19.99 as a download and £24.99 as a collector's edition CD box set, which also unlocks a free download version on release. This exclusive Big Finish pre-release price will be held until the set's general release at the end of May 2020.
So it's apparently an early release that they're doing. Give people stuff to listen to while they're bored at home. So that is all of our news. We're going to move to our Geek Talk section because, we're all a bunch of geeks sitting at home.
We got stuff that we gotta watch. Speaking of which, by the way, I noticed that you're missing a movie in there, Bill.
Oh, because I said that movie I basically threatened to do if somebody actually is doing old stuff, but I don't see dates on this, so I don't know if you're actually doing old stuff.
Yes, you're threatening.
I was mainly preemptively retaliating for Thomas reviewing some 80s movie, which he's not doing this week.
Well, everything I'm reviewing is like past the year 2000, so.
Okay.
Yeah, technically speaking, I think what Matt's doing might actually predate Doctor Who.
No. No, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure when the last couple of things came out, but not all of it.
Yes, Half-Life 2 premiered in 2004.
That premiered in 2004, but when did episodes 1 and 2 come out?
Yes, but you're doing the whole thing, so that doesn't matter. It's the earliest thing on the list.
Shrug. By 1 year. So are you doing that threat or not?
Sure. Sure, I went ahead and typed it in. Either
All right.
way, movies are not the first thing, so that's not what we'll
Yeah,
start
I
with.
just wanted to make sure about that
Mhm.
because I noticed it was not there.
Yep.
Mm.
Okay.
All right.
So to start with, over the last 2 or 3 days, I've been watching Black Lightning season 3, which is now on Netflix.
I've never even
Um,
watched season 1.
Ah,
Shows you how out
Um,
of touch I am.
so I'm going to go out and say that season 3 is the strongest of the 3 seasons so far. In short, my descriptions of season 1 and 2 were basically that they were doing some of the plots that Luke Cage and Daredevil were doing, except not as good.
Mm,
Um,
that's not a good sign. Yeah.
yeah, so I kept watching, but I wasn't a huge fan of seasons 1 and 2. Season 3, it really feels like they kind of have grown into the show. They're still kind of doing that thing where there's like 3 or 4 main characters. Basically, all of the members of Black Lightning's family are all main characters and all have their main plots. And I don't think they really weave them all together very intentionally. There's a lot more focus on the social allegory, the civil rights aspect, and things like that. But this season's plot also had a lot to work with in regard to that, so that part really worked. And there's also just the fact that a lot more characters are actually there that are powerful enough to challenge Black Lightning, whereas I feel in season 1 and 2, other than the big bad, he was pretty much the only one who could go toe-to-toe with himself in a fight. So that makes a
Essentially
big
just dealing with a bunch of
difference.
thugs.
Yeah, kind of like I don't remember everything in seasons 1 and 2 at this point, but I do have the feeling that he was definitely the most powerful physically character. So the only challenges really were the non-superpowered ones, really, the things going on in his life.
Mm.
Whereas in this, that's not the case. There's definitely challenges on both sides. I will say something kind of pissed me off in the finale. So they didn't. If I say the name of the trope that I'm annoyed about, it's a big spoiler for the final episode. So I don't know if I want to go that far. But basically, they use the trope that people have been complaining about a lot lately because it's very prominent, and basically marginalizes a community of viewers. And they probably did it because they didn't know if the actress was going to return or not. But the way they did it kind of did not do anything that, it definitely participated in alienating that section of the audience.
Still left a bad taste. Yeah.
Yeah, so other than using that trope, I honestly think this was a pretty good season. I don't know if you could just start with season 3 because it involves a lot of backstory, but maybe. I didn't really watch it thinking of it in case of new viewers, but it's possible.
All right.
So I guess it's still me then moving on to Star Trek.
One question for that.
All right.
Are they still trying to tie it into the Arrowverse at all or not?
So basically at the mid-season, it went from being a separate universe to being part of new I don't think they called it New Earth. I think they're calling it Earth Prime. But as of the mid-season, it's now on the same universe as all the other CW shows.
Yeah,
Okay.
they've all been tied
So
together
it was
now.
not before, but they
And
they did a special where they dealt with multiple universes as a kind of if one character had gone to one extreme or the other extreme instead of a middle path, kind of to help her find her way. And then the next episode was Black Lightning returning from Crisis, and everything proceeding as normal. And because they were in this major season-long plot, it didn't really cause any major changes within the context of the show because it would have fucked everything up if they had made any major changes.
Okay, but we'll have to see how it goes in like the next season.
Yeah, so next season is when you'll probably start to see crossovers.
Okay, I was just curious.
At least more frequently.
Right. But yeah, so the next thing on the list is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So with the fact that I've been home a lot more lately, as everybody else has, I had time yesterday when I needed to take a break from schoolwork, and I watched Star Trek VI. for the first time. So that's the only Star Trek movie I had not watched at all yet. Although
Oh, really?
some of them I actually barely remember because they were just not the greatest. But it's one I had heard a lot of good things about,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know it existed for the longest time because the VHS collection we had at home was bought before this movie came out.
Oh,
So I always had thought that Star Trek V was the last original series movie.
You thought that Shatner's abomination killed Star Trek.
Kind of. It doesn't help that with Generations onward they stopped using numbers. So
Yeah,
I was
not
referring
helping,
to
yeah.
I was referring to Generations as number 6 for years.
Oops.
But having watched this now, I definitely see what all the hype is about. It's basically a murder mystery in space, with all the Star Trek benefits. I think it was a much better note than Shatner's movie in terms of the original cast to go out on.
Shatner's abomination, get it right.
And yeah, I mean, my only nitpick would be seeing everybody walk around in full dress uniforms on the bridge was kind of jarring. But oh well, that's barely a nitpick. It was a good movie.
The movie era dress uniforms weren't that different from their regular uniforms. I didn't remember it being anything real special. But
Yeah, like I said, it was barely a nitpick. It didn't really affect anything. But yeah,
This-
if you're a fan of the original cast, this is a good movie to watch.
one thing to note about that movie is that you can really tell it's directed by the same person as Star Trek 2, because he really likes to wreck his models.
He really likes quoting literature.
He likes quoting literature, and he loves to wreck his models. I mean,
Also,
Consider-
he loves making quotable lines. I mean, what does God want with a starship?
that's not from that movie.
Oh, wait, it
That's
wasn't?
from
I thought
Yeah,
that
Shatner's
that's from Shat-
Abomination.
Oh, that was from the Abomination. Never mind. Sorry.
Yep.
Sit
thought
down
that-
in the corner, Matt.
I'm sorry. I thought it was from this one. What the hell? Okay.
No. We are not talking about William. We're not talking about the crew of the Enterprise meeting God. That's 5. That's Shatner's Abomination, aka Kirk's fever dream.
It wasn't good.
It's still freaking yeah. That's a terrible movie.
But yeah, like they say, the even number ones are the
Mm.
good ones, and this definitely lives
Well-
up to that.
3 is mediocre. It's not as good as 2
Mhm.
or 4, but it's
But
not as
But
bad.
2, 4, and 6 are definitely 2, 4, 6, and 8 are definitely some of the best Star Trek movies around.
Yeah, and then 10 broke that trend.
Mm-hmm.
Thud.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
but then again, that was the last movie before the 2009 reboot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Nemesis, right?
Yeah.
Wah wah.
Yeah, it's literally Star Trek 1 through 6, Star Trek 1, the motion picture, 2, Wrath of Khan, 3, Search for Spock, 4, The Voyage Home, 5, The Final Frontier, Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country,
Mm-hmm.
Generations,
Oh,
First Contact.
I want to slap myself.
First
I remember which one
Contact,
this is now. Duh, I'm an
Insurrection, and then Nemesis. And you can tell I used to be a Star Trek geek.
idiot. Okay, yeah. My brain just finally remembered what this movie was. I'm gonna smack myself. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you get to sit in the corner with the dunce cap. You
Don't
hear
know
that,
why my
dummy?
brain
You
went
know what you did.
backwards. One.
It doesn't help that the Final Frontier and the Undiscovered Country are such similar
Themed titles. Yeah.
symbolic concepts that it's hard to tell them apart.
That does not help.
For me, there's a good mental separation because one's an abomination and the other one's one of the best movies in the franchise.
That's why I think it's easier to think of them as 5 and 6 than as Final Frontier and Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, I just can't believe you'd never seen it before.
Hmm.
All right, so we're going to video games now.
So it's a video game. So the first one I put in there was Half-Life 2. Getting an image up now quick because I had stuff ready for Bill's, but not for mine. All right. So I finally had the pleasure to finally finish the Half-Life series as it is before the VR game, which I will not be touching. I don't have the space nor the money. But I will say I finally played the Half-Life 2. I've played the originals for quite a while, off and on over the years. I've never gotten to touch 2 literally until this year. Um, I was very happy with what I got to see there. It was everything I hoped it was going to be. It was essentially one with a lot of cleanup and a lot better visuals. They threw a lot more plot into there as well. There was a big development on what's gone on in the amount of time that we've been gone from Earth and what they're actually doing. And while we didn't cover completely everything, we did learn essentially that our main enemies are, in fact, still interdimensional aliens. And they have been doing a lot of strenuous work trying to mess up Earth, essentially, and try and take it over for themselves. And have, for the most part, succeeded, but not completely. And while I really enjoyed 2 and the episodes tied together really good, really well, and really quickly, so much so that you really feel there's no time lapse, despite the fact there's, I believe, multiple years by the time episode 2 came out. Sadly, the series still ends us on a cliffhanger, and also from what I'm aware of, the VR game that just came out is a prequel to 2, not
Yes.
a sequel.
Correct.
So they're maybe further developing Alex as a character, but outside of that, they don't seem to be really doing much else to actually continue the plot right now.
Oh,
at least.
That's why. Oh, that's why everyone's mad that VR is not Half-Life 3. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, they
that's
keep
part
saying
of it.
we'll make Half-Life 3 someday.
Yeah, what actually what officially came out of Gabe's mouth this week is that the same excuse that Nintendo keeps giving, that they don't want to just make the same game again, which can be either really good or really bad, because that's come to bite Nintendo once in a while as well, because look at the last couple Star Fox games. They've not really been the big game busters they should have been like the previous games have been. So maybe you
Yeah.
should just make another one and just rehash a few things and update some other stuff. Just
Shit,
saying.
I think Half-Life Episode 2 came out before that Torchwood episode, or about the same time. Episode 2 was out in 2007, which means that Valve hasn't continued their story plot for Half-Life in over a decade.
Mm-hmm. It's been out for quite a while, and they continuously promised there'd be an episode 3, and never came out. And then they continued to promise that there's going to be a Half-Life 3 instead, and that still hasn't come out.
Correct.
And like I said, their excuse is that they're trying to find the right thing to put out, and it's like, and you put out a VR game? There's already only a very select amount of people that can afford it, much less can have the room for it.
You know what happened? They got obsessed with Team Fortress 2 and Portal.
No, not even that, because technically Portal was a offshoot continuation of Half-Life, and that still stopped. And Half-Life and Team Fortress 2 hasn't really had a major update in the better part of a decade either.
Yeah, but they keep making new stuff for it.
They keep making new hats.
Yeah.
But anyways,
but it's still making them money, so yeah.
Anyways, to summarize my thoughts on Half-Life 2, really good game. Really liked it. Son of a gun, freaking Valve, you need to get back to this thing. I don't care if it's going to be just basically an updated version of Half-Life 2. Just continue it, for crying out loud. You can just continue the plot and keep the same mechanics, dang it. Anyway, also offshooting from that, I recently, with help of others, finished Man vs. Machine for Team Fortress 2.
Wow, really hammering that Source engine recently, aren't you?
Yeah, just so happened that as I finished that, all of a sudden the group I play multiplayer stuff on Tuesdays with decided we were going to grab everyone we can, and we're going to do the Man vs. Machine, which was essentially the big co-op for Team Fortress 2. There are, I believe, somewhere between in the vicinity of like 6 to 8 levels for the game, for that particular part of the game. Some of the negatives I'm going to get out of the way really quick are that this is an older select a server and go kind of game, and it's starting to really show really badly. Because if you go into a server that isn't just a normal server, it'll try to patch up the stuff that's on the server, and if you don't already have it installed on your computer, it's going to go into an eternity loop of just trying to load things and never finishing. So that's become a big annoyance with Team Fortress 2. So you have to cancel like 2 different windows and then restart a search for a server again. It would be nice if you just give us some servers of your own, Valve. Just seriously, there's no reason not to at this point. You should be running the show a little bit better if you're not going to really give us any major updates for the game. That aside, though, it was a lot of fun playing it. We had a full party of 6 people. I originally was planning to start off as a sniper, but found that for some reason I just couldn't get the hitboxes right with the sniper, so I was constantly having issues. Since no one else had picked it, I on a random spin of what classes aren't picked a soldier and just went ham. I'd forgotten that I actually had some weapons with the soldier that didn't require ammunition to reload, so I just constantly reloaded and just kept firing without having to go back for more ammo. And it's built in such a way that you can regenerate health as long as you're taking down the robotic enemies. So I got ridiculously powerful after a while and was able to start taking down mobs of robots, although I will say that the tanks still give you issues. You need almost the entire party there, even with a turret if you're an NG, to try and take those things down. But otherwise, that was a pretty fun game, and the last level of the game, by the way, there's no real plot to it other than you're just a bunch of the Team Fortress guys trying to survive a robot apocalypse, essentially. And the last episode apparently must have released in Halloween or something, and it's a whole Halloween theme. The wave is wave number 666. And outside of all the Halloween decorations, they give you essentially an impossible wave. I'm sure there are people that probably have beaten it, but we would have to have a particular build, I'm sure. But it was fun just to give it a try and watch chaos ensue. Other than that, yeah, it was fun, but very short-lived, and we are planning a different game next week.
All right. So that is our Geek Talk up to our review of Shame.
All right. So this week I watched Battlefield from season 26.
And shame you weren't on there originally.
Huh?
I said shame you weren't on there originally for this, considering it's one of your...
Yeah.
Right. Yes, and for anybody who doesn't remember, this is the one with dead King Arthur and Morgaine and the Doctor being Merlin in his future, which might be the past. And so what I liked about it was that it was definitely a fitting tribute to the Unit era. They weren't planning on this being a cap off of Doctor Who, but it definitely kind of fits in being, a capping season. What I disliked was that the Brigadier's whole doesn't get women and pisses women off thing kind of got old after 2 or 3 times. You would think, it's not like there were never any women in Unit that did anything other than fetch tea. So you'd think he would get over it a little more quickly. And he never quite did.
Well, actually, there wasn't. I mean,
There was Liz Shaw.
Liz Shaw, but she was basically demoted to the Doctor's assistant. Which is why she quit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Joe Grant, who was the Doctor's assistant. And then there was Sarah Jane Smith, who was the Doctor's assistant. There were no other females in Unit.
At least not at the time, for sure. As far as we saw.
But you would think over the decades after the Doctor left that there would have been some. Britain's not that backward.
We think that he stepped down really before that happened.
My favorite scene, I'm going to go with the Brigadier meeting 7. Meeting the 7th Doctor, just because somebody is a real close friend of the Doctor when they can see a doctor that they've never encountered before, who hasn't even had the chance to speak yet, and immediately recognize that is the doctor right there. Which is something that even Captain Jack has failed at as of 2020.
Yep. But then
So,
again,
yeah, so that-
then again,
Mhm.
how many doctors has the Brigadier met?
Brigadier has met the second. Well, shit. If you include the 5 doctors, then he has met 5 doctors prior to this. The only one he didn't meet was 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is
Jack has
quite
met
literally
2.
old hat to him at this point.
Jack has met 2. He does not know the full range of Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, yeah, this would be his 6th doctor. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Jack has met Eccleston, Tennant, and now Whittaker. Well, no, hasn't really met Whittaker, just companions.
Just companions.
Right.
He hasn't met her yet. So only 2.
Yeah.
My least favorite scene, and this is kind of nitpicky, just because it was a scene that I felt, I don't know, it didn't add much and just made you feel bad. Which, I mean, a lot of 7th Doctor scenes are made to just kind of make you feel bad for no good reason. But the scene where Morgaine is like, "Oh, can I at least look on dead Arthur's face one last time?" And the 7th Doctor is more or less, "Oh, I just blew him up. Sorry."
Actually,
and
I think he said he's already gone to dust.
Yeah, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that it's his fault.
No,
You know,
it's not. When he opened the helmet, there was nothing in there but dust anymore.
Yeah.
Ah,
That corpse had
Literally,
stayed there for
as soon as they
1,000
opened the door, it dissolved
1,000 years.
partially.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
yeah. It was
Mhm.
that corpse had just been there so long that any
Mhm.
surface tension was gone.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that he blew it up. It was that it's just been that long.
Gotcha. Yeah, when he said "gone to dust," I actually thought that was because he blew it up. I thought that actually was
No, because he literally opened the door and he dissolved.
Yeah. But either way, that was a nitpick, so it didn't really have a major impact on my enjoyment of the episode. And yeah, I will go along with the consensus and give it a 5 because it's just a fun, like, it is such an 80s movie in all of the best, most glorious ways. Like, I don't know
the
if
way
it
I
could be
described
made
it
any-
is essentially it's Doctor Who doing the Masters of the Universe movie, but they did it slightly better,
I could see
actually.
that. Like, this could have been a movie, like, even if nobody knew what Doctor Who was.
Yeah, if they threw more
it
budget
could
at
have
this
been a
season, it could have
movie.
become a movie.
It could have been a movie, just, you know, a Merlin that hasn't experienced King Arthur's life yet because it's in another dimension. Like, that already sounds like an 80s B movie plot. Like,
Yeah.
and everything in here is the most glorious side of an
Oh.
80s movie.
Oh, I'm trying to think of
the interesting thing is that with varying releases in home media, there actually has been basically a TV movie edit of this serial.
Not surprised. Well, that's what they used to do with like VHSs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like the one on the DVD, and that is like updated effects in some point. I think even they said like some scenes were possibly changed around to flow better or something like that.
That wouldn't surprise me. There's always some editing ticks that you can always fix slightly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, either way, him rating that a 5 does absolutely nothing to the score because we all gave it 5s. So it remains
It
its
remains one of the
gold
best
star
Doctor
standard.
Who. Yeah.
Far be it from me to be the one person to lower the score of Battlefield
Yeah, I
of
figured
any
that
season
much.
26 episode.
Yeah, if you're like, I'm going to have to give this a 4.5, I was going to have to go over there, break isolation just to kill
And
you.
that was my fear going into this. I was like, I remember liking the episode, but I didn't remember it being quite as good as some of the others. So I was like, oh boy. But then I'm rewatching this. I'm like, yeah, it's not a stretch for me to give this a 5. Like, I'm having fun every minute.
Even if there is problems with this episode, there's enough fun to make up for any issues. It's like, no, this is good. This is good. No, never mind.
Yeah, the only reason it's not remembered well is because there was a lot of really good episodes that season.
I also think like the kind of movie I just described also is like, it's that kind of niche geek enjoyment thing that like anybody who's been to a convention like we have is probably going to love it. But your average like non-fantasy viewer that just watches Doctor Who because it's a show on the BBC might find it more confusing and not get as engrossed into it as we would.
Maybe.
So thus far, the only one for season 26 that we haven't done is Curse of Fenric. And that, by the way, is considered the best episode of that season by most people.
Oh,
No.
challenge accepted one these days.
Did we talk about it in like our best and worst special in season 1 or something? Because I feel like we've talked about it. Like just like Pyramids of Mars, somebody swore that we reviewed it and we hadn't. I feel like Curse of Fenric, like we've reviewed it, but we actually haven't.
I don't think we've done an in-depth review of it, no. There's several episodes we've talked about repeatedly. We've never reviewed the Happiness Patrol. We've talked about it a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard of Curse of Fenric, but I definitely have not seen it yet.
We haven't reviewed Greatest Show in the Galaxy. We've talked about it a lot.
Haven't seen that one either.
I feel like Happiness Patrol was on the ticket once, but we moved it for whatever reason.
Yeah, things tend to get shifted, so not everything ends up where we want it to be originally.
Especially anything that we plan to watch a year that new Doctor Who is coming out.
Yep. Anytime that they decide, oh yeah, we're starting new Doctor Who, we immediately have to cancel everything on that schedule and go.
Like I could see it being like Happiness Patrol is a great election day episode, and they're like, oh yeah, Doctor Who is going to start October 1st this year.
Crap. And we do have regular specials that we have to also schedule around, like the tributes to John Barrowman and Elizabeth Sladen that we do every year. So,
and formerly the annual August special, but
that's done for that's done with right now, especially in today's society. If that was supposed to, if that was happening, if that would have been happening in April, that would have been nope, not happening this year.
Right.
Oh. Okay, so that's the review of Shame. We are down to the summary. So let's move into the episode. Tim, would you like to summarize Small Worlds?
All right.
Did we lose a Tim?
Oh, sorry. I accidentally muted my mic. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
A sweet little lady with a camera is wandering through the woods, and she takes some pictures of some rather big fireflies. And then she turns around, and the fireflies turn into these really mutant winged creatures. Captain Jack has a nightmare about riding a train. Then he goes up and finds a flower petal on his table, and he turns around and sees Yanto there, and Yanto says that there are unusual weather patterns. We then cut to a little girl in school who's being picked on, but the little girl doesn't seem to mind. And she walks home on her own and is almost picked up by a stranger danger. But the wind comes and blows the stranger away, or just blows really hard, and the stranger gets back in the car and leaves. Meanwhile, Captain Jack and Gwen visit the old lady who is taking pictures of the mutant fireflies. And the old lady believes that they are fairies. But Captain Jack knows better. That they are evil creatures, not aliens, but beings from beyond the beginning of time. He warns the old lady who's named Estelle, to call him if she sees the quote fairies again. And Gwen suspects that a photograph of Jack from World War II with a young Estelle, who Jack claims was his dad, is actually Jack. Meanwhile, the guy who tried to kidnap the little girl starts coughing up flower petals, and demands to be arrested by the police. They do, and he eventually chokes on flower petals in his cell. So, and when Torchwood investigates, they find the flower petals in his mouth, and Jack remembers that he was riding a train one day with some soldiers, and when they went through a tunnel, they came out, all of them had choked to death on flower petals. Jack says it's because some of them got drunk and ran over a kid who was a chosen one. Estelle calls Jack when she finds sees the fairies again, and the Torchwood team rush to her aid, but it's too late. She stands outside in the rain and dies from drowning. And Jack is very, very sad. And while the little girl from the beginning goes back, who keeps going out to the woods, is secretly a chosen one. And then her stepdad builds a fence, but the fairies come and take down the fence, and they kill the stepdad, and Jack and the little girl goes and into the woods and wants to join the fairies and like go off to Never Never Land or what have you. And then Jack says, "Okay, fine. If you won't destroy the world, we'll do that." And they're very sad, and the mom of the little girl is upset that her daughter has basically been kidnapped by fairies, and her husband has been choked to death on flower petals, and things are rather dismal. And we end with Gwen looking at a photograph of fairies, and we find that one of the fairies' pictures from the early 20th century looks a lot like the little girl who disappeared. The end.
Gwen realized it was a small world after all.
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible, Bill.
And Bill has just been voted first one to get choked by a small world doll.
I just came up with that, and I knew there was not going to be a better point during the podcast to say it than at
This
the end
just
of the
in,
summary.
Bill Sylvia was found dead in his apartment with flower petals coming out of his mouth.
Yes.
Very
Police
smashed
are
groinal area.
But what was my time?
Your time was 5 minutes 16 seconds.
Oh. Well, it's
Just
better
a
than that last
smidge
time I
over.
did it.
Just a smidge.
Okay. So let's talk about what we liked about this episode. And Thomas, you're first.
Let's see. I wasn't really sure when I was going to bring this up, so I guess I'll just use this as an excuse to bring it up. For a show that usually goes out of its way to be over the top adult, yay, grimdark, they handle the pedophilia stuff pretty tame. So, which I'm kind of glad about in hindsight, because it's like, given how they've handled other stuff in this show, that could have gone to some very like uncomfortable places in a
Yeah.
bad way.
Yeah, it
Agreed.
really could have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Matt, how about you? What did you like about the episode?
Uh, actually, this one was interesting. I never noticed it. Maybe it's just me, or maybe I just never noticed it till this point. I noticed that they did a lot of really good like steady cam motion, and for the kind of episode they were trying to do here, which required like lots of shots of following children around and quick movement with all these little fairies and stuff, it actually worked really well, I think, for the theming of this particular episode. Just a lot of really good camera work.
All right. And Bill.
So I like the way they built up the mythology of the fairies, not specifically the ways by which I mean there's how do I say it? Not specifically the vehicles by which the information was introduced, but the way I just like the way that the facts were built up over the episode, and there's just this sense of dread about the fairies that's built up over time. I like that aspect of it.
All right. Tim?
I loved the relationship between Jack and Estelle in this episode, how it was presented, and especially John Barrowman's performance in his interactions with Estelle. Like you could tell, like there was a history there that it made sense that Gwen would pick up on that right away.
Well, yeah, mind you, the recurring theme over this series was the mystery of Jack Harkness, so this just fed into it really well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what I liked about it, I guess the visual effects weren't bad, I guess is what I can say. They weren't absolutely wonderful, but considering Torchwood's budget, yeah, this wasn't bad.
Yeah, there were some moments of touch and go, but the mass majority of them definitely were really solidly done.
All right, so let's talk about what we didn't like. Thomas, you're first.
To immediately counterpoint to Randy's positive, it just was so glaring to me. At least it's more so in like the final scene, but the CG fairies stick out so clearly as yep, these aren't actually there because there's no. I guess the term would be compositing or something. Like they don't look like they're there. They don't cast shadows at all. There's just all this thing of like, that's like I get it. It's Torchwood. It's a tight budget, but it's still like, come on. Even Sarah Jane Adventures usually remembered to actually make the things look like they were actually there. And
Yeah,
not
there was
just like
definitely a couple of big
poorly.
close-up shots where I was like, "Oh,"
Yeah.
for that
Like
particular
at
sequence.
the party scene at the end, it's like it's on top of him about to shove his hand in, and it's casting no shadow at all on him, and it's just.
You ever wondered if that might have been deliberate?
Like I did think on my on my rewatch, I was like, maybe it's supposed to be they're magical, so why not? But it's still kind of like, I don't know.
They were too CG looking for it to feel like it was intentional, basically.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, actually, I'll mention it in scenes
All right.
if I get a chance to.
So, Matt, what about you? What did you dislike about this?
Outside some the iffy spots in CG, what did I not like about this? I didn't like that we got a clear idea of where the bloody fairies come from. Something about lost land and maybe something about before time, that's never really clear. And for something that seems to keep periodically popping back up on Earth and apparently is a big enough of a powerhouse that they could literally kill the Earth if they want to, over losing one of their own. There's a lot of questions and no answers.
Well, it's like they deliberately tried to keep any fairy mythos out of there. Because I swear to God, there were times I'm like, oh my God, that's, they could have just kind of referenced the Seelie and Unseelie courts and gone, yeah, that makes sense. But they deliberately chose not to.
I can
Instead,
understand
they
wanting to make your own
referenced the
mythology
Mara.
around them, but the fact of the matter is they didn't even really finish their own mythology about them.
Well, I think it was the fact that they kind of wanted to, but at the same time, they realized this is supposed to be science fiction. We bring those in, and we are going really far into fantasy.
Again, there's
as
a
compared to the
sci-fi way
writers
of
of
doing it.
Battlefield, which gave no shits.
Well, that's Arthurian legend. That's
That's Arthurian legend combined with an alternate dimension.
yeah.
So at least there I can get it. Oh, it's an alternate dimension where King Arthur was a thing, and swords are just as likely as laser blasters. You know what? That's cool. I can deal with that. But these
yeah.
are bonkers, Betty. What the heck are they? Or are they? Where'd they come from?
Because there are legends going really far back about the Seelie and Unseelie courts kidnapping people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously where the whole concept came from. But yeah, they seem to go out of their way to avoid talking about it, which I think was a mistake.
Again,
Instead
I think
of
they were trying to find a
it.
more sci-fi take on it, but they didn't actually finish coming up with that take, and so they just shoved out what they had.
I can see how it would be good for, especially with the Cardiff Rift and everything, talking about like, yeah, there's legends of this going back centuries. I do think that they were trying to like tie it. Their main focus was building up the myth of Captain Jack, which is also why I made that Peter Pan reference in the introduction as the unaging Captain Jack. But yeah, they could have that might have distracted from other things that might have been in a draft.
Yeah, it just feels incomplete. Bill.
So what I disliked is that all of the suspense in this episode, at least maybe not all of it, but much of it, is based on things that the audience already knows. For example, they see the guy attacked. We see the pedophile. He's attacked by fairies. He's spitting up petals, and then there's this suspenseful scene where the Owen's doing an autopsy and pulls out one single petal, and I'm like, we already knew that, so the suspense is wasted. And then there's also all this suspense around Captain Jack is actually older than he looks. And if you've gotten the hints, even from the first episode, even from just earlier episodes that season, you're kind of just like, yeah, we figured that out. That's not that suspenseful. So I felt that kind of diminished the effect of some of the scenes.
Well, mind you, the big reveal about Captain Jack Harkness. Okay, as of this, we've done Everything Changes, Day One, Ghost Machine, and Cyberwoman. So all we really know about Jack is that he can't die.
Mm-hmm.
So this was actually the first thing, is that he might actually be really, really old. And it's not until I think it's Captain Jack Harkness at the end of the season that we actually get proof positive of seeing him back in that era. So
true, but even in this episode, we get flashbacks to him being I forget what the time frame was, but wasn't it like World War I era?
Something like that.
Yeah, so we already see that he's at least 100 years old.
Yeah, but that's
being coupled with Gwen trying to figure that out. It feels anticlimactic.
All right. Tim, how about you? What did you dislike about this episode?
I thought this episode wasn't not that it was grimdark, but it had a lot of morbid and disturbing imagery for my tastes.
Yeah, I figured that'd be an issue with you with this episode. Torchwood frequently has that problem because it was supposed to be a lot darker than regular Doctor Who.
Mm.
I would like to tack onto that my problem with the episode is the ultimate futility of it.
Yeah, because the fairies are just going to come back for
Mhm.
somebody else again someday.
It's like the original Children of Earth.
Basically.
I mean, it's the fact that, I've bitched about the fact in episodes of Doctor Who where the Doctor basically affects the story not at all. And that's the same thing I have with Torchwood in this. They don't affect the story.
They've uncovered the story and then immediately have to do nothing about it.
Yeah. They don't learn anything more about the supposed fairies that they didn't already know. And they can't save anyone.
No.
So it's basically a pointless episode. So yeah, that kind of bothers me.
Yeah, I will say one of my other ones, if I hadn't gone first and if someone had taken mine, was going to be like the fact that only one person we're supposed to like dies. It's like I don't care about the other characters that die because it's a friggin' pedo, and the last thing we see the boyfriend, the mom's boyfriend do before he dies is backhand the girl. So
yeah,
it's like,
he was kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Like
Frequently
throughout
for it
the
too,
episode.
yeah.
Or he was like
Yeah.
I think he was like a true neutral sort of character.
No, he was a dick.
No, he was an asshole. He was constantly
Yeah.
like talking her down, berating her, and going
Yes,
like, "I can see why your
yeah.
dad left" and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was they basically
That's true. Oh yeah, the scene in the car.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they went out of their way to make him an asshole.
I mean, it could have been worse, and they could have made him another pedo. Thankfully, they didn't do that. But it's just like, why is like the old lady the only one that we're supposed to give a shit about when she dies? It'd be nice to have other people.
All right. So we're up to favorite scenes now.
Yep.
I suppose so.
So yeah, for me, it's kind of funny because as much as I just bag the boyfriend out, the aftermath of his death and the mom of the kids, like just her reacting to his death is like, damn, I don't give a shit about this guy, but I give a
This
shit
poor
about her
woman.
because she is, this poor woman selling the hell out of this.
All right, Matt.
It was either that or a scene like after that someone else.
Do you remember who the old lady's name was again?
Estelle.
Estelle.
Yeah.
The almost interestingly obvious chemistry between Estelle and Captain Jack in this episode was really good, and the fact that it did have to end so sadly is kind of a testament also to not only her acting as a new side character for one episode, but to the acting for qualities for Captain Jack to be so understandable as you just see him just crestfallen, quietly crying, and then there's just this slow, bitter rage later on as he's back at Torchwood trying to think of what to do next to stop the fairies. He hasn't quite given up on trying to hopefully stop them, but it sadly does not turn out the way he wants to. But John Barrowman throws 110%, and she does a really good job being a supposed past love interest too.
All right. Matt.
That was me.
Okay, sorry. Bill, I thought you were feeding off of Thomas's. So yeah, Bill.
So this was favorite scene.
Yeah.
I will say the first fairy attack, the one in the cold open. I think that was pulled off very well. There's, you don't know what's going on at first. There's suspense. How is this girl going to get out of here? And then it takes that horror turn, and I thought that was a very effective scene.
All right. Tim?
I loved the climax where Jack is holding on to the little girl who's like, and he's bargaining with the fairies, and then the little girl speaks in the fairy voice, like a dual. What is just that that was a very high stake scene that played very well, I think.
All right. So I'm going to say I like the finale where Gwen finds the picture of the girl.
Oh, that's my other one too. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that one actually legitimately made the hair stand up.
Hmm.
I'd forgotten that
Okay.
particular part of the ending. It's like, oh, okay, that's still
Yeah.
effective.
All
It's
right.
only just occurring to me now, but it'd be funny if someone set that to like the music at the end of The Shining, where you pull in on that photo and Jack Nicholson in it.
Now here's what I wonder about that. Did they digitally insert the girl into the picture, or did they find a girl who looked remarkably like someone in the picture?
Hmm.
If it's
That's
there,
that.
that's some creepy circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So least favorite scenes, Thomas.
Um. I guess just because the whole thing kind of bothers me of how long it takes. Um. I'll just go with the scene where the pedo's running around coughing up uh flower petals and that, because like at that point to me it's just like by the end of it and when he's get arrested and when he finally dies later, it's just like, god, this is taking a long time.
Yeah,
Like,
that seems deliberately drawn out.
yeah. Like to a point it's nice because you get to see the pedo suffer, but it's also kind of like, we could be using this time for something else.
Yeah,
I think it's supposed to be making you scared of the fairies. Like the more you see, the more you're like, oh shit.
Instead, you're kind of like, get on with it.
Yeah.
Yes, get on with it.
All right, Matt.
I'm gonna have to say there's a couple of scenes in particular in the big backyard brawl that do not mesh well. One in particular is the fact that the fairy. There's a scene where a fairy comes up at Jack Harkness, and literally Jack is looking straight off to like the side from the camera, and yet the fairy comes at him from an angle, and he doesn't seem to see it until it's attacking him.
Yeah.
Then when it grabs him, it looks okay, but as it lands, it's like he doesn't even know it's there, and it kind of shows, and that's where some of the effects just go oof. That scene in particular for me is just ooh, yeah. Come on, guys, you had a better. You're running the season.
like,
you could have done this better.
Yeah. And like Gwen's like right next to him and she doesn't really
Yeah, she
notice
seems
that.
completely baffled.
All right, Bill.
So I mentioned this earlier and I was talking about the overall trend, but I couldn't really come up with a scene that I felt as bad about as this one, and the autopsy scene where they pull out the one single flower petal after we just saw that long drawn out scene of him coughing up dozens of petals. And it felt like it's just so anticlimactic, like there was nothing that the audience learned from that scene.
Look,
Like hell,
it's
it
flower
could even
petals.
just
We
like,
couldn't have predicted
yeah.
that one.
Like if he was stumbling around coughing, but we didn't see what he was coughing up, and then
that
later,
would have fixed it.
like,
yes.
Yeah. Like later, it's like, oh shit! Turns out he was coughing and gagging and all that because it's just his guts just filled with flower petals. It's like that would work better instead of seeing that and then being like,
Yeah.
they're acting like it's a big reveal later.
All right, Tim.
I really did not care for the scene where Estelle dies out in the rain for multiple reasons. One, from a plot point, I never understood why the fairies targeted her particularly
Because
because it doesn't.
she got their picture.
Oh,
I think it was actually more to the fact that she kept leading Torchwood to them.
well, it
Probably.
just didn't seem to fit in with their modus operandi for the other two deaths. That she didn't pose any threat to the child.
No,
And-
it was the you've seen us, we cannot let you live.
Okay, but still, just the presentation of her death seemed kind of off-putting. Like, yes, she's in the rain, and it looks like she's being mildly inconvenienced. But how does one drown from standing in the rain? It didn't look like it was a particularly hard rain.
Yeah, I know. If she had died of hypothermia, that would have been better.
That's what I was
I
thinking originally when I saw the scene too.
I thought the idea was that they were generating water inside her lungs the same way they did the flower petals. I'm
Except
not
it
sure
was
I even
raining.
realized it was raining during that scene. I just thought that they killed her that way.
It's I was thinking, is she a turkey? She stands with her mouth open,
I guess even to latch onto that, they see her at she's in the cold open of the thing when she takes the photos, and they take this long to act.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
again. That's why I believe it's more to the fact that she led Torchwood to them is why they're actually starting to get pissed.
I would
Torchwood
like
is
to-
obviously trying to get in the way.
I would like to also claim the same scene as Tim because of the stupidity of we're on our way, don't go anywhere, and then she goes out to look for her cat.
Yeah.
Well,
I
lonely
mean,
old
I
cat
would-
ladies.
I would be in the freaking safest room in my place, you know?
Especially after a window smashed in.
which
Yes,
begs the
exactly.
question: was the cat a willing accomplice to her murder?
Apparently not, as it was just sitting there quietly going like, what the fuck?
It's like, I ain't dealing with this shit, man. Yeah.
It's assumed that possibly the fairies make cat noises to lure her out.
Anyway, final thoughts. Thomas?
It's interesting watching this episode, remembering that this falls between Cyberwoman and Countryside, where Cyberwoman is an episode that's, at least for me, hilariously bad, entertainingly bad, and Countryside is just generally good. And this is kind of in a way, it's funny because you have 3 episodes where it's entertainingly bad, kind of middle of the road, and then great. With this being, the sort of it's a fairly middle of the road episode. I feel like the first time I watched it through, I might have liked it more, but yeah, upon a rewatch, it's just I don't. It's not horrible by any stretch, but yeah, I don't know. It's you could probably just skip this if you wanted, unless you were trying to watch every single episode. I don't know if I'll ever watch this episode again now that we've covered it. But yeah, if you're trying to watch it the whole show, watch it, but otherwise you could probably just skip this.
All right. Matt?
I think the visuals, outside of a few outliers, are usually pretty good in this episode. The story is interesting, but I think they failed to fully develop it properly before having to put this one out, at least for the case of the villains. Otherwise, the acting is really good, and outside of needing to trim back a few scenes to further develop things, which I assume was probably made because it needs filler, this is otherwise a pretty good episode. It's not great, but it's not mediocre boring.
Is that everything?
That kind of covers most of my bases.
All right. Bill?
So this episode is part of a plot that hinges a lot of its suspense on something I think they gave way too much information away of in the first episode. If they had been a little bit more vague about the whole Jack can't die thing and just had him mysteriously like return after being shot, even just that minor change, I think would have really built up this whole plot about like how, all of this mystery around Captain Jack and made it a little bit more suspenseful and a little more palatable for me. So as a result of that, this episode loses a lot of the dramatic punch that it's really going for. However, I do think it's very effective in building up the fairies as a credible threat, and it does a much better job than some of the episodes before it in establishing the tone and of Torchwood as being a show where, they're not the Doctor. They're not going to win every time. Sometimes just dark shit's going to happen and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. At the same time, that's kind of depressing and you start to wonder why you're watching if they're not going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also kind of middle groundish. Ultimately, I think it's kind of good episode, but a misguided one.
All right, Tim?
This episode was really a sucker punch for me from just based on the title of the episode. I was expecting something more, or maybe hoping for something more whimsical.
Whimsical in Torchwood?
Well,
I
what's
know,
more
I know.
whimsical than fairies?
Fairies that reach down your
Yes.
throat and make you choke.
Okay.
Freaking whimsical.
I did like some of the clues to like Jack's past and his insights to his character. But I think it was especially cruel on the characters themselves, knowing that we end this episode with everyone depressed, and I'm thinking, oh boy, wait until you find out what happens in the next episode. So, like that was too much. Yeah, I think this episode was just a bit too awkward and squeamish for me. That being said, I can't say this is a bad episode because it was well done, but it was just not my cup of tea.
Okay.
Remind me never to try and show you any of the Halloween movies or Friday the 13th for that matter.
And my thoughts on it. This episode seems like this is something that they should have let bake a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
They needed a little more progress. They needed to put some kind of progress in there, even if they didn't win. Some kind of new piece of data they discovered where Jack could look at that and go, someday. But instead, yeah, it's just completely and totally pointless. It's basically just makes everybody depressed and really just a better version of the Children of Earth miniseries of proving that Captain Jack's willing to sacrifice anything to keep the status quo going, which I never liked that plot line anyway.
Yeah, I never liked that take on Jack.
So yeah, I'm not overly pleased with this episode. It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Okay, ratings. Thomas.
I intentionally looked back because I know I gave Countryside a 5, and this isn't anywhere near that. But I also, out of curiosity, went back to see what I gave Cyberwoman, and I gave that a 3. I think this is better than that, even though I was being generous to Cyberwoman.
Were you the
because it made
highest
me
person
laugh.
on Cyberwoman?
Probably,
That sounds
but
like really
Yeah,
high for that
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
he was.
To be fair, I was being kind because it made me laugh a lot. So it was like, well, it's entertainingly bad at least. It just felt like
Oh, the rest of us cringed.
it just felt like a crappy
He was the high scorer because the low ball score was a 1.0 from Tim.
Oh.
So yeah, while I think this is better than Cyberwoman, plus there's also the benefit of not having any Gwen and Owen stuff.
Oh,
Thank
God, yes.
goodness, yeah. I forgot about that. That was a
I may
possibility
have
for this
I may have
episode.
to give it an additional.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would almost give it. I would almost give it a 4 just for not having any Gwen Allen stuff, but I'm gonna give it a 3.5.
All right. Bill. Or wait, no, Matt. Sorry.
I think Matt, yeah.
I was about to say, did we skip me?
No,
I,
my brain just somehow got you two reversed ordered in my brain.
I will say, unlike Thomas, I was struggling between a 3.5 and a 4, and actually the fact that we didn't have the Gwen and Owen garbage from this season in this episode does push it to a 4 for me. Thank you, episode. Just wish the rest of the season would have learned that lesson.
Okay.
It obviously wasn't working.
So you said a 4.
Yup.
So I was also waffling between a 3.5 and a 4. But I think the fact that they only make any progress on the meta plot, which was kind of, as I described, kind of a wasted meta plot, and didn't actually make any progress on their actual goal, is enough to drop it down to being the 3.5 instead of the 4.
All right. Tim?
I'm just gonna have to give this episode a straight 3. You know, it's just averages out to an average episode for me.
All right. I'm going to give this a 3.5. That whole half point being for the lack of Gwen and Owen stuff. Which means that Bill, myself, and Thomas are right. Because the average turns out to be 3.5. That will put this in our rankings at number 231 out of 335 things reviewed. It is on par with Fugitive of the Jadoon, The Serenga Conundrum, Planet of the Dead, The Eaters of Light, The Savages, Planet of the Ood, Reign of Terror 42, City of Death, Christmas Invasion, Twice Upon a Time, Mark of the Rani, Fury from the Deep, and A Town Called Mercy. It is better than The Long Game, The Android Invasion, The Five Doctors, The Mythmakers, Androids of Terra, The Curse of Peladon, Silver Nemesis, etc. And it is not as good as The Doctor, the Widow, The Wardrobe, The Woman Who Lived, The Tomb of the Cybermen, Full Circle, and The Resurrection of the Daleks. So there we go. 231 of 335. That is all we have to say about Torchwood Small Worlds.
All right. So what do you at home have to say about Small Worlds or about Torchwood in general? Please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Keep getting our exports of new podcasts, or to follow us on Twitch to keep getting them every Wednesday evening.
All right. And next week, we continue our tribute to John Barrowman with another episode of Torchwood. It's Greeks Bearing Gifts, written by Toby Whithouse and starring John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness. Eve Miles as Gwen Cooper. Vern Gorman as Owen Harper. Naoko Mori as Toshiko Sato. And Gareth David-Lloyd as Ianto Jones. So see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.